Imagine archaeologists uncovered thousands of mysterious objects scattered across Europe, each small enough to fit into the palm of your hand, each carved by people who spent every day fighting hunger, freezing winters, and deadly predators. Yet instead of making another spear, another knife, or another tool that could keep them alive, they invested precious hours shaping the same strange figure over and over again. Why? That question has puzzled scientists for more than a century, because these tiny sculptures refuse to behave like ordinary artifacts. They appear in caves, ancient campsites, and forgotten landscapes stretching from France to the frozen plains of Siberia, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, yet somehow connected by a surprisingly familiar idea. Most of them show women with remarkably exaggerated bodies, while their faces often seem unfinished or missing altogether. If survival was the only priority during the Ice Age, this makes almost no sense. Every hour spent carving stone, ivory, or clay was an hour not spent searching for food, repairing shelter, or watching for danger. Ancient hunter-gatherers understood the value of time better than anyone because a single mistake could mean death. So why would they repeatedly create something that apparently offered no immediate survival advantage? The deeper archaeologists dug, the stranger the mystery became. These figures were not made by one tribe, one generation, or even one culture. They appeared across nearly 20,000 years of human history. Entire civilizations have risen and disappeared in less time than these sculptures continued to be made. That kind of persistence almost never happens by accident. It usually means an idea became deeply rooted inside the human mind itself. But what idea? For generations, museums displayed them under one famous name, the Venus figurines, quietly suggesting they represented beauty or fertility. Yet that label was invented by modern Europeans long after the Ice Age ended. The people who carved these figures never called them Venus, never left written explanations, and never told us what they believed. In reality, the name may have shaped our thinking more than the evidence ever did. This is where archaeology becomes less like history and more like detective work, because every assumption has to be tested against fragments buried beneath layers of earth for tens of thousands of years. One of the greatest surprises came in 1908, when workers excavating near the Austrian village of Willendorf uncovered one of the most famous figurines ever found. At first glance, it seemed to confirm what everyone expected. The sculpture emphasized breasts, hips, and abdomen so strongly that many researchers immediately connected it with fertility. The explanation sounded convincing, almost obvious. After all, in an unforgiving Ice Age world, healthy mothers and surviving children would have been essential to every community. But science becomes interesting precisely when the obvious answer begins to fall apart. As more discoveries emerged, archaeologists noticed that not every figurine looked the same. Some were carved from mammoth ivory, others from limestone, bone, sandstone, or even fired clay. Some appeared remarkably detailed, while others were almost abstract. A few even wore what looked like carefully carved clothing. If they all served one universal purpose, why were they so different? Then another discovery forced researchers to rethink the entire timeline. Deep inside Hohle Fels cave in Germany, archaeologists uncovered a figurine carved from mammoth ivory that was roughly 40,000 years old, making it one of the oldest known representations of the human body ever created. Suddenly the mystery became even bigger. Symbolic thinking, artistic imagination, and abstract communication were flourishing almost as soon as modern humans entered Europe. These people were not simply surviving. They were expressing ideas powerful enough to survive for thousands of generations. But perhaps the most astonishing discovery came from a site in what is now the Czech Republic, where archaeologists found clay figurines that had been intentionally fired long before pottery became common. That means Ice Age people were experimenting with controlled heat tens of thousands of years earlier than many expected. Some figurines had exploded during firing, and remarkably, researchers now suspect those dramatic fractures may not have been accidents at all. Imagine standing beside an Ice Age fire as a carefully shaped figure suddenly cracked apart in the flames. Was it merely failed craftsmanship, or was the destruction itself part of the ritual? No one knows. That uncertainty lies at the heart of this entire mystery. Every new discovery answers one question while creating three more. Even more surprising is where many of these figurines were found. Most were not hidden inside obvious temples because temples did not yet exist. Instead, they often appeared among ordinary camps where families slept, prepared food, crafted tools, and gathered around fires. Their world had no cities, no kings, no written language, and no permanent monuments. Yet these small sculptures remained important enough to travel across landscapes and generations. That simple fact challenges one of our deepest assumptions about early humans. We often imagine Ice Age people thinking only about the next meal, but these artifacts suggest something very different. Long before history was written, people were already investing time in symbols, identity, memory, and beliefs that cannot be measured with stone tools alone. And perhaps the biggest clue is not what these figurines show, but what they leave out. Faces are often missing. Individual identity seems almost erased. Was that intentional? Were these sculptures meant to represent one specific person, every woman, motherhood itself, an ancestor, a shared belief, or something we have not even considered yet? After more than 100 years of excavation, improved dating technology, and countless scientific studies, archaeology has produced an extraordinary amount of evidence, yet it still cannot answer the one question everyone asks first. Why did they make them? And as we follow that question deeper into the evidence, we discover that the real mystery may have less to do with the figurines themselves, and far more to do with the human mind that created them. What if the biggest mistake isn't misunderstanding the figurines, but believing they all had to mean the same thing? Modern minds naturally search for one perfect answer because we like problems with clear solutions. Yet archaeology rarely works that way. Imagine someone thousands of years from now discovering millions of wedding rings buried across different countries. Some belonged to happy couples, others to divorced partners, some were treasured family heirlooms, while others were never even worn. They would all look similar, but assuming they carried one identical meaning would be completely wrong. Many archaeologists now believe the Venus figurines may present the same challenge. They could have represented different ideas to different communities across 20,000 years, evolving as generations came and went, just as languages, traditions, and beliefs change today. That possibility changes everything because it shifts the mystery away from the sculptures and toward the minds of the people who made them. One particularly fascinating theory suggests that at least some figurines may have been carved by women looking down at their own bodies. From that perspective, the chest, stomach, and legs naturally appear much larger, while the face almost disappears from view. It is a clever explanation that fits several figurines surprisingly well, yet many experts remain cautious because not every sculpture matches this pattern, and archaeology demands evidence before certainty. Other researchers see signs of pregnancy, childbirth, survival, or family identity. Some believe these objects carried spiritual importance, while others argue they were teaching tools passed between generations. The remarkable thing is that none of these ideas completely explains every discovery. Instead of pointing toward a single answer, the evidence keeps reminding us that ancient people were probably just as emotionally complex as we are. They loved, feared, celebrated, mourned, hoped, and searched for meaning in ways that stone alone cannot preserve. This is exactly why the figurines continue to frustrate science. They refuse to fit inside a simple category. Then another overlooked clue quietly appears. Many of the sculptures show almost no interest in individual identity. Faces are often blank, expressions absent, and personal details ignored, while the body itself becomes the message. In today's world, where faces dominate social media, passports, and photographs, that choice feels almost impossible to understand. But perhaps Ice Age people were communicating something entirely different. Maybe they cared less about one individual and more about the qualities that allowed a community to survive. Food, motherhood, resilience, cooperation, continuity, and belonging may have mattered far more than personal appearance. If that interpretation is correct, these tiny carvings become something extraordinary. They are not portraits. They are symbols of what kept human societies alive during one of the harshest climates our species has ever endured. Even the materials tell a story. Some figurines were carved from mammoth ivory carried across great distances, suggesting these objects were valuable enough to travel with highly mobile hunter-gatherers. Others were shaped from local stone or fragile clay, showing that the idea behind the figurine often mattered more than the material itself. That pattern hints at something deeply human. Throughout history, people have carried meaningful objects through war, migration, disaster, and uncertainty, not because those objects guaranteed survival, but because they preserved memory, identity, hope, and connection. Perhaps that instinct did not begin with civilization. Perhaps it has been part of us for tens of thousands of years. Yet the most honest conclusion may also be the most powerful one. After decades of excavation, advanced dating methods, microscopic analysis, experimental archaeology, and countless scientific debates, researchers still cannot tell us exactly why Ice Age people made these figures. And that is not a failure of science. It is evidence of how little survives from a world without writing. Archaeology can uncover tools, bones, pigments, campsites, and sculptures, but thoughts disappear unless someone records them. The figurines have become silent witnesses to conversations that ended long before history began. Every generation of archaeologists asks them the same question, and every generation receives only fragments of an answer. But perhaps those fragments reveal something even more important than certainty. They remind us that intelligence is not measured only by technology. 40,000 years ago, humans were already asking questions about life, identity, family, survival, and perhaps even existence itself. They created symbols powerful enough to outlive empires, religions, and languages, eventually reaching our hands across an almost unimaginable stretch of time. The greatest mystery, then, may not be why they carved these figures. The greatest mystery is how deeply their minds already resembled our own. Beneath different clothes, different tools, and a frozen Ice Age landscape, they worried about the future, protected the people they loved, searched for meaning in an uncertain world, and left behind one quiet message carved in stone. Human beings have always been more than survivors. We have always been storytellers, symbol makers, and seekers of something beyond tomorrow. And somewhere beneath the soil, hidden inside caves that have not yet been explored, another forgotten figurine may still be waiting, not to answer every question, but to remind us that the oldest mysteries are often the ones that teach us the most about ourselves. If one tiny Ice Age carving can change how we see humanity, imagine what the next forgotten discovery could reveal. Subscribe to Yore, because the greatest stories in history are still waiting beneath the ground.